New York City, March 1983. Rain pelted the windows of Radio City Music Hall as limousines lined the street outside, their headlights cutting through the evening darkness, reflecting off the wet pavement like scattered diamonds. Inside the historic venue, the atmosphere crackled with the particular electricity that accompanies gatherings of entertainment royalty. The occasion was James Brown's 50th birthday celebration concert. Not merely a performance, but a cultural convergence, a night when musical legends would pay homage to the godfather of soul, the man whose innovations had shaped their own artistic journeys. Backstage, in separate dressing rooms positioned with deliberate distance between them, two young artists prepared for appearances that would later be recognized as pivotal moments in their complicated relationship, in the unacknowledged rivalry that media narratives would increasingly frame as defining their parallel rises to unprecedented fame. Prince Rogers Nelson, 24 years old and fresh off the breakthrough success of 1999, vibrated with the particular intensity that characterized his presence both on and off stage. His preparation carried the controlled chaos that defined his creative process. Music playing at volume that would have been considered intrusive in any other context. Last-minute adjustments to the already flamboyant outfit that pushed boundaries of both gender and genre categorization. Those who worked closely with him recognized the heightened energy, the subtle indicators that tonight carried significance beyond routine performance. This wasn't just another concert, but rare convergence of multiple musical traditions on single stage. Opportunity to establish position within hierarchy of Black musical excellence spanning generations. From James Brown himself through contemporaries with whom Prince felt both kinship and competitive edge. In separate dressing room, Michael Jackson sat in characteristic pre-performance stillness, his slender frame already costumed in the black sequin jacket and single glove that were rapidly becoming his signature look following his electrifying Billie Jean performance on the recent Motown 25 television special. At 24, he stood a transformative threshold. The phenomenal success of Thriller beginning to catapult him beyond mere pop stardom in a cultural territory no Black artist had previously navigated. His preparation contained none of Prince's apparent spontaneity, instead characterized by focused silence, by meticulous attention to each element of the coming appearance, by the particular intensity that had defined his approach since childhood performances with his brothers. His face revealed nothing of his thoughts, years of living under constant observation having perfected his ability to maintain public composure regardless of private emotion. What neither artist could have fully appreciated in that moment was how completely the entertainment industry and public had cast them as rivals, as opposing forces in competition neither had explicitly entered. Music journalists, seeking narrative framework for these two revolutionary talents emerging simultaneously, had constructed storylines of contrast and competition. Michael as mainstream perfectionist, Prince as provocative outsider. Michael as global phenomenon, Prince as critical darling. Michael breaking barriers through palatability, Prince through confrontation. These manufactured narratives had created subtext to their simultaneous appearances at this significant cultural event, their performances inevitably viewed through lens of comparison rather than individual artistic merit. If this story of rivalry, regret, and unexpected reconciliation moves you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful moments that reveal the complex humanity behind the iconic performers who shaped a generation. The concert proceeded through its early performances with the usual mixture of genuine emotional moments and technical transitions. The audience, a fascinating hybrid of industry veterans whose expressions suggested they had seen it all, and younger talents visibly awed by their proximity to foundational figures in American popular music. When Michael was introduced, when he took the stage to pay tribute to the man whose performance style had influenced his own artistic development since childhood, the audience response was immediate and overwhelming. Recognition of artists ascending to unprecedented cultural position through combination of extraordinary talent and meticulous creative discipline. Michael's performance that night displayed the particular alchemy that defined his artistic peak: technical excellence, serving authentic emotional expression, precise execution enhancing rather than limiting genuine feeling. His movement vocabulary, while incorporating elements clearly influenced by James Brown's revolutionary performance style, had evolved into something distinctly his own. The impossible precision, the sequential isolations that created illusion of body responding to music at molecular level, the seamless integration of street dance innovations with more formal theatrical traditions. When he executed his recently debuted moonwalk, the audience response approached pandemonium. Fellow artists rising from their seats in spontaneous recognition of boundary being broken, of new possibility being introduced to collective understanding of what human movement could encompass. As Michael concluded, as he acknowledged the standing ovation with characteristic humility that somehow enhanced rather than diminished his essential command of the space, Prince watched from just offstage, his expression unreadable to those nearby. What transpired in his thoughts during those moments would later become subject of speculation, of armchair psychological analysis by those seeking to understand the complexity beneath the apparent rivalry. Was it genuine appreciation complicated by competitive spirit, recognition of different but equally valid artistic approach, or something more human and therefore more complex? Admiration tangled with envy, respect complicated by desire to establish distinct territory in cultural landscape, increasingly defining them in opposition to one another? We'd love to hear your thoughts on music rivalries that eventually led to mutual respect. Have you witnessed other artists who competed but ultimately recognized each other's unique contributions? Share your examples in the comments below. When Prince took the stage shortly after, the contrast in performance approach was immediately apparent, visually embodying the stylistic differences that journalists had already begun constructing into symbolic opposition. Where Michael had appeared in elegant simplicity that focused attention on his movement vocabulary, Prince emerged in characteristically flamboyant attire that deliberately blurred gender boundaries, that announced artistic position outside conventional categorization before he played single note or executed single dance step. Where Michael's performance had demonstrated meticulous preparation, Prince's carried quality of controlled spontaneity, the appearance of improvisational inspiration masking the careful craft beneath. His musical tribute to James Brown incorporated elements that highlighted his particular virtuosity: the multi-instrumental facility, the genre-bending approach that refused convenient categorization, the sophisticated musicality that complemented his provocative visual presentation. The performance built with characteristic intensity, Prince demonstrating the particular command that made his live shows legendary even at this relatively early stage in his career. The audience response matched the enthusiasm that had greeted Michael, though with subtly different quality. Appreciation of different but equally valid approach to artistic expression, recognition of parallel excellence, taking distinct rather than comparable form. What happened next would be described differently by various witnesses, interpretation shaped by perspective and position within the venue. But the essential truth appears consistently across all accounts. As Prince reached the performance's climax, as the audience response built toward inevitable standing ovation, he incorporated movement that unmistakably referenced Michael's iconic moonwalk, not as homage or tribute, but with subtle quality of parody, of mockery barely disguised as acknowledgement. The movement itself was technically impressive, demonstrating Prince's own formidable dance abilities, but contained unmistakable undertone of competitive diminishment, of establishing superiority through mimicry that emphasized difference rather than connection. The audience reaction revealed immediate recognition of this unspoken commentary, this performance within performance. Some laughed, interpreting the reference as good-natured ribbing between artistic equals. Others exchanged uncomfortable glances, sensing the subtle aggression beneath the surface acknowledgement. In the wings, Michael's expression remained unchanged, his performance training and personal discipline maintaining composed exterior regardless of internal response to this public challenge, barely disguised as artistic reference. As Prince concluded, as the audience rose in appreciation that contained mixture of genuine artistic acknowledgement and slightly uncomfortable recognition of boundary crossed, he exited stage with characteristic theatrical flourish, his expression revealing nothing of whether the competitive reference had been calculated decision or spontaneous impulse, emerging from complex, emotional landscape beneath carefully constructed public persona. What neither artist could have anticipated, what even those present that night would only recognize through perspective of subsequent events, was how this brief moment of mockery, disguised as homage, would reverberate through their complicated relationship over coming decades. How it would be interpreted and reinterpreted through lens of media narratives increasingly invested in framing their artistic journeys in oppositional terms rather than as parallel expressions of Black musical genius, manifesting in distinct but equally revolutionary forms. The years that followed saw both artists ascend to unprecedented heights of commercial success and cultural impact, their careers evolving along trajectories that occasionally intersected but more often developed in separate spheres of influence. The perceived rivalry, initially constructed by external narratives rather than explicit acknowledgement from either artist, gradually accumulated weight of seeming reality through occasional public comments, through strategic career choices, through subtle artistic references that could be interpreted as competitive positioning rather than natural evolution of distinct creative visions. For Prince particularly, the moment at Radio City Music Hall became increasingly complicated in retrospect, its significance shifting as his own artistic journey evolved, as his understanding of creative legacy developed beyond immediate competitive positioning to encompass broader questions of musical tradition, of contribution to cultural evolution, of responsibility to artistic authenticity beyond commercial considerations or media narratives. The moment of reckoning, the public acknowledgement of regret that would transform seemingly minor incident into significant emotional watershed, came unexpectedly during performance that on surface appeared routine tour stop rather than occasion for profound personal revelation. Minneapolis, October 2007. Prince had returned to his hometown for performance at newly opened arena. The venue itself representing transition in his relationship with a city that had shaped his artistic development, yet from which he had maintained complicated distance throughout much of his career. At 59, he had evolved beyond the provocateur of his early years to elder statesman of musical innovation. His commercial peaks behind him, but his artistic credibility perhaps stronger than ever through continuing commitment to boundary-pushing creativity, to performance excellence, to musical exploration unconstrained by commercial considerations that had occasionally complicated his major label relationships. The concert proceeded through carefully constructed set lists that balanced crowd-pleasing hits with deeper album cuts demonstrating his continued musical evolution. His refusal to become nostalgia act despite catalog that could easily have supported such approach. The audience, mixture of longtime fans who had followed his career through every twist and record buyers who knew only the radio hits, responded with enthusiasm that acknowledged both his historical significance and continued creative vitality, his simultaneous position as architectural foundation of contemporary pop music and still active artistic force. Midway through the show, during extended instrumental section that had given his virtuosic band opportunity to demonstrate their considerable abilities, Prince suddenly signaled for reduction in volume, for simplification of arrangement to create space for unplanned communication. The unexpected deviation from usually precise performance structure created ripple of anticipation through audience familiar with his legendary improvisational abilities, but typically experienced within context of musical rather than verbal expression. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately," he said, his voice carrying that particular intimacy he could create even in arena settings, the sense of individual communication despite massive collective audience. About what we leave behind, about how our choices echo forward in ways we can't always anticipate. The band maintained subtle musical foundation beneath his words, the harmony creating emotional context for unexpected moment of direct address. When you're young, when you're fighting to be heard and seen in industry that doesn't always make space for genuine innovation, it's easy to see competition where you should see community, to focus on differences rather than connections. The audience had fallen into expectant silence, recognition dawning that they were witnessing unusual departure from typical performance mode into territory of personal reflection rarely accessed in public forum. Prince moved to center stage, the lighting shifting to create more intimate visual environment despite the venue's massive scale. Years ago, at James Brown's birthday celebration, I shared stage with another young artist who, like me, was trying to carve a unique path through industry designed to flatten differences rather than celebrate them. You might have heard of him, Michael Jackson. The reference created murmur of recognition through audience, awareness of the historical rivalry that had been constructed around these two revolutionary artists. That night, I did something I've regretted for many years. I mocked him on stage. I took what he had created, movement that was genuinely innovative, that broke boundaries in ways we're still absorbing, and I turned it into competitive statement rather than acknowledging another Black artist's contribution to our collective evolution. The confession carried weight beyond its specific content, beyond the particular incident being acknowledged. This wasn't carefully crafted public relations statement, but genuine expression of evolved perspective, of mature artists recognizing responsibility to historical truth beyond comfortable narratives or self-protective positioning. The audience had fallen into complete silence, collective recognition of witnessing genuine moment rather than performance construct. I never got the chance to tell him directly that I regretted that choice, that I recognized how it contributed to narrative that diminished both our contributions by forcing them into competitive framework rather than acknowledging how we were both pushing boundaries in different but equally necessary ways. Prince paused, the weight of lost opportunity evident in his expression, in the unusual vulnerability visible through performance persona typically characterized by carefully maintained mystique. Michael is gone now, and that conversation can never happen in this lifetime. But maybe by saying it publicly, by acknowledging it to you tonight, some small healing happens anyway. Not just for me, but for how we understand artistic legacy, for how we make space for multiple expressions of genius without forcing them into opposition. The band had gradually faded to near silence during this unexpected monologue, the spotlights focused with unusual stillness on Prince's figure at center stage. For several heartbeats after he finished speaking, the arena remained in complete silence. Recognition of having witnessed genuine moment of human truth rather than entertainment construct, of private reckoning made public through rare convergence of circumstance, setting, and evolved perspective. When he finally moved, when he signaled the band to resume with subtle gesture that reconnected him to the performance's musical foundation, the audience response contained quality different from typical concert enthusiasm. This wasn't appreciation for entertainment, but acknowledgement of authentic human vulnerability, of courage required to publicly reconsider choices made from perspective of youth and competition when viewed through lens of maturity and expanded understanding of artistic responsibility beyond individual career positioning. What followed defied easy categorization within standard performance framework. Prince began playing melody instantly recognizable to everyone present. The opening sequence of Billie Jean, Michael Jackson's iconic hit, the song whose Motown 25 performance had included moonwalk debut that Prince had later mockingly referenced at James Brown's birthday celebration. But this was no parody, no competitive positioning. The arrangement had been transformed. The familiar pop structure reorganized into blues framework that simultaneously honored the original while translating it into Prince's distinct musical language, creating conversation between artistic approaches rather than oppositional statement. For approximately 4 minutes, brief span in chronological time, but expansive in emotional impact, Prince created musical reconciliation that transcended the specific tension he had acknowledged, that offered model for understanding artistic contributions as complementary rather than competitive. that demonstrated how genuine respect could manifest through creative dialogue across stylistic boundaries, constructed more by marketing categories than musical realities. The performance contained no lyrics, no direct Michael Jackson quotes beyond melodic foundation, yet somehow conveyed emotional narrative more powerful than explicit verbal statement could have achieved. Journey from youthful competition through mature recognition of shared contribution to collective cultural evolution. When the improvised tribute concluded, when Prince acknowledged the audience response with uncharacteristically understated gesture rather than typical theatrical flourish, something had shifted in the relationship between performer and witnesses. The carefully maintained boundary between public persona and private reflection had momentarily dissolved, allowing a glimpse of genuine human journey beneath the iconic image. The evolution from young artist positioned in constructed rivalry to mature creative force recognizing responsibility to artistic truth beyond convenient narratives or comfortable self-positioning. In days that followed, as word of this unexpected moment spread through music communities and beyond, the significance expanded beyond the specific incident acknowledged to touch broader questions about how artistic legacies are constructed, about responsibility to historical truth beyond media narratives that often simplify complex creative relationships into easily digestible opposition, about possibility of reconciliation and reevaluation even when direct communication has been rendered impossible by death or circumstance. For those in attendance that night, for those who later encountered recordings or descriptions of the unexpected confession and musical reconciliation, the moment provided rare insight into genuine character revealed through unplanned interaction rather than carefully constructed public statement. The humanity visible when performance mask briefly yields to authentic reflection, when carefully maintained narrative gives way to more complex emotional truth about regret, growth, and evolved understanding of artistic responsibility beyond immediate competitive positioning. If this story has touched you, if it has offered perspective on how artistic rivalries often mask deeper connections and shared contributions to cultural evolution, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who might appreciate this glimpse beyond the headlines and constructed narratives to moment of genuine reflection from an artist whose carefully maintained mystique occasionally yielded to reveal the thoughtful human being navigating complex, creative journey beneath the iconic public image. In a longer historical view, as both Prince and Michael Jackson have passed into legacy status, as their works continue influencing successive generations of artists across musical boundaries, moments like the Minneapolis acknowledgement acquire additional significance. Rare windows into genuine human complexity beneath iconic images, into evolution beyond media narratives that often flatten multidimensional artistic journeys in a simplified opposition or competition. The brief mockery at James Brown's birthday celebration represented young artists navigating industry that often created artificial scarcity where abundant recognition might have better served cultural evolution. The unexpected acknowledgement 2 decades later demonstrated mature perspective, recognizing responsibility to artistic truth beyond comfortable narratives or self-protective positioning. Perhaps most significantly, the Minneapolis moment offered template for reconciliation beyond direct communication. Acknowledgement that even when personal conversation has been rendered impossible by death or circumstance, public reckoning can still create healing, can still contribute to more nuanced understanding of artistic relationships, too often defined by constructed opposition rather than recognition of parallel contributions to collective cultural evolution. In a world increasingly dominated by simplified narratives and artificial division, such moments of genuine reflection, of mature reconsideration, of acknowledgement that extends beyond convenient positioning to embrace more complex emotional and artistic truth, provide rare glimpses of human growth beneath the iconic images that often obscure rather than reveal the continuing evolution of extraordinary artists navigating unprecedented public attention while pursuing genuine creative authenticity.